Spotlighting Hawaii's leaders.
We want to bring in Governor David E.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor.
Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Mayor Derek Kawakami.
Thank you so much, Senator, for being here.
Spotlighting the issues.
Where is the virus right now in our community?
How much is this overall going to cost the state?
How are you responding to the community's concerns? Talk about the level of citations that you guys are writing.
Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Well, good morning, Hawaii. Thanks so much for tuning in here on this Wednesday morning. I'm Ryan Kalei Suji, joined by Yanji Denise, and this is Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. This morning, we're going to be spotlighting Maui County and speaking with the mayor there about a number of issues that are happening there in that county.
That's right. We are joined now by Maui Mayor Mike Victorino live at his office. Mr. Mayor, good morning.
Good morning and aloha to you and everyone out there.
Well, we want to start talking about a national issue that is making headlines. We have a lot of county issues to get to, but before we do, we want to acknowledge all the lives lost in the terrible tragedy in Texas yesterday. There's a big headline in today's Honolulu Star-Advertiser talking about the fact that the DOE does not have a formal active shooter sort of scenario training for students and staff. It's so sad that we even have to think about this now, but what are your thoughts about how prepared Hawaii's children are and the educators? And do we need something more formalized from the Department of Education should Hawaii's kids ever have to face something like this?
Well, let me start by saying I was on the Board of Education in 1999 when Columbine first came to light. I think one of the first mass shootings of students by students. And I remember then saying to our colleagues that we need a plan of action so that evacuations could be done in an orderly manner to protect our children and the staff that work in our schools. Unfortunately, I don't think it's ever really come to fruition. I believe it's time we really look at that as a community. I would hope the DOE would participate and active shooters or programs that are set up to make sure people are aware when something occurs, what course of actions they need to take. And I think this is something that I would promote more closely, especially with the number of shootings we've had lately in the mainland. I worry that someday somebody will lose it here in Maui County, and I would hate to be there to go and console their families of the loss of their children. So I truly believe to be prepared is to practice or to at least have a plan of action like we do for everything else, like hurricanes and this pandemic. We've written the manual for it. So I truly believe we should, and I would be encouraging the DOE, the new superintendent, our governor and the legislature to put some money aside to have a program in place should a occurrence like what happened yesterday happen here in Maui or in any part of our state.
You know, you mentioned the pandemic. As we continue to go through this pandemic, we got more numbers released from the State Department of Health today, showing again an increase in cases statewide and across every county. Wanted to get your thoughts on where things are at with Maui County and moving forward, if you had given any thought to reinstating some of the restrictions that were put in place, such as mask mandates that some municipalities on the mainland are now also considering.
Thank you. Before we move into that area, may I express our condolences and our sincere sympathy to all the families in Texas for the loss of their loved ones, and our prayers are with them. So I wanted to finish that off if you don't mind. And thank you for allowing me to do that. Talking about our pandemic, as we've seen, these surges have come and gone in different periods of our last 2 years. And again, we're in a slight surge right now. Maui had 801 new cases reported. 772 were here in Maui County, on Maui Island, 18 on Molokai, and 11 on Lanai. I really am considering asking people to be what I call respectful masking. Respectful masking means, please, right now, be respectful to the next person, especially our elders, our children, those who have health challenges. Let's start masking up again indoors, especially when you're with bigger crowds or large crowds. I'm not putting any mandates. This is just a true request or recommendation, because even the CDC has said that they recommend masking when indoors, because the large numbers. As far as mandating at this point, I hope we don't have to, but the Hawaii Applied Modeling Group has indicated that the numbers will rise to mid-June or late June for most of the counties. And so we're preparing ourselves. Our hospital is not in bad shape. They have 24 patients in the hospital right now, 3 in ICU and 2 on ventilators. So, and these are current numbers. These are numbers I got this morning. So they're being mindful of what's going on. We are trying to prepare. What I ask everyone is, we have a lot of home tests that people are doing now. And when you do these home tests, we don't know the results. If you find yourself positive, either report it to your doctor or to the State Department of Health and quarantine. Stay away from others. Don't go to work, because you tend to spread. And this BA2 variant spreads more quickly than the original Omicron. So that's the only request I have. Respectful masking is what I'm calling it. And I'm going to be putting out a notice to the public that I'm asking them to be respectful and wear masks, especially when indoors right now.
One of the shifts that happened in leadership was the governor basically giving the counties back a lot of the power to put on these restrictions that we saw in recent months. Would you like to see, if there is a mask mandate, that it comes county by county and that's something that you'd execute? Or do you prefer that being something that comes from, the capital and having the governor do statewide? Do you think that it would be more effective, perhaps, to have the governor do this, or do you like having that power at the county level?
Well, I think it's important to have that ability, because your county may be really different than another county. And some of the numbers and positivity rates vary from county to county. But we're such a small state, and we're so interactive, by traveling between the counties for business and visiting families, vacations, whatever it might be. So in this case, when the entire state has numbers really, really large, like what you're seeing, I think a state mandate or a state mask wearing policy might be good at this time because of the large numbers. But again, most of the mayors and I think the governor, want to at least ask first for your consideration, you, the public, to wear masks and prevent getting into big crowds and slowing the spread, maybe even to the point of stopping it. We're fortunate that our medical facilities now not only have testing sites, but we have medication that we can apply immediately, so that we lessen the chance of spread and lessen the chance of severity in this variant. But with all of that being said, I believe if what we're having now is statewide, then we should look to the state to help us, and we can concur and do it. But in certain cases, maybe one county is really, really bad off. They should be able to have a ability to make changes for their safety and health of their people.
Respectful masking is, what you're calling this, and the call out to your community. But the other measure part of this, as we've seen restrictions over the past, has been the size of gatherings. Do you foresee any changes in that policy at all? With it being graduation season, there are a lot of celebrations that are happening, a lot of ceremonies. What would you say for those larger events? Do you foresee anything changing there?
I hope not. I'd like to have this sophomore class that are now seniors have gone through 2 years of this pandemic. They've really felt the brunt of it. They've had distance learning, they've had in-person learning, they've had all kinds of changes in their curriculum and their schedules. And I think they deserve their graduation in 2022. I attended a number of graduations. Many people are very mindful. The DOE requires indoor mask wearing, outdoors no. But many people did wear masks at the different graduations that I attended, including the staff. And so I think the spread is here now. I think if everybody is being respectful to each other and wearing a mask, especially when they're in large crowds or indoors, I believe we'll be able to curb it, and we'll see a start decrease in the next couple of weeks. But in the meantime, we're being mindful. We're watching our hospital because we only have one full service hospital here in Maui, and we've got to be mindful of the numbers. And if it gets overwhelmed, then restrictions may be required.
And what is that sort of line in the sand or that threshold that we and that you are watching that would trigger, right now respectful masking is a suggestion, but it's not a
Right.
mandate. What would sort of push you over the line?
Well, if the hospital at one point got up to 58 cases in the hospital and 14, excuse me, correction, 14 were in ICU. I mean, that we only have, I think, 31 beds in ICU total. So when you're talking nearly half and the number of beds was nearly 1/4 of all their capacity, that's when the line in the sand was drawn, and we had to make changes as far as attendance, closing of or reducing the capacity of our restaurants. So we have a plan, and we have a quote line in the sand that you use, that if it's crossed, that we'll take appropriate action at that point in time.
Want to also talk about just the summer months coming up as we head into this season of travel. The number of tourists that are expected to come on shore to your island of Maui, of course, a popular tourist destination. I wanted to get your thoughts about any sort of changes that you look to potentially implement to curb the impact of visitor arrivals to the island of Maui. There's been a number of proposals being floated around by your county about ways to help control this. What are any updates that you can provide us as the county prepares for this busy month ahead of travel?
The hotels have reported very brisk bookings, but they're different bookings. What we had during this past spring season, were much more mindful, respectful visitors. We have implemented some of the desired parking and some of the policies for Wainapa Napa. We're trying to adapt to other parks here in Maui County, the state and the county. But right now, what we're trying to do more importantly is make sure when the visitors come that they're respectful, that this is our home and that you're coming to visit our home. And please be mindful, be respectful to our home. Like if I would go to your home, if I walk in, like as a custom, we take off our shoes, right? You don't wear your shoes in someone's home. And other respectful methods. Now, I'm not saying when you're at a hotel, take off your shoe every time you walk into your room. I didn't say that. But, what I'm looking for is to train people, to ask people to be respectful to our resources, to our beaches, and everything they endeavor in. Be kind to it. Be mindful that that is someone's home, and don't be trekking in areas that you don't, so that you get in trouble and we've got to go look for you. And we've had far too many rescues last year and earlier this year of people going off in areas where they're not supposed to. You've seen that in Oahu, and you've seen that all over the state. And so we're hoping that people are much more respectful when they come, and we're missing, the hotels are passing that message on too. So I'm confident that we'll have a better visitor and one that will be more respectful to our home, Maui County.
I also want to ask you about the drought issues that your county is facing right now. Here on Oahu, we have our own situation with Red Hill, and there's been a call to reduce water by 10%. We know that, part of that call to action is also because of the statewide drought, and we know that you are really feeling that on Maui. What kind of water reduction measures is the county working on, and what are you telling the citizens as we head into a very warm summer?
Well, right now, we are very dry. We've had some big brush fires lately, some set intentionally and some just brush fires that occurred. There was 30 acres between Kahului and Maui Lani Golf Course the day before yesterday. And so with that being said, first of all, our fire department is well prepared. They've had a lot of practical practice and real practice out there, so they're prepared. I ask citizens now to be conservative on water. We haven't really pushed any percentage, but as the summer goes on, the upcountry area seems to have challenges because it's a surface water system. And when we have severe droughts, the water the water tables start to drop, the intakes start to lower. So restrictions are then calculated based upon what's happening around us. So right now, we're asking Maui County residents to be mindful of throwing or starting or hibachis, any kind of fire outside that can spark a brush fire, to be really careful. And for conserving water, we've always asked for conservation of water. Don't be wasting water. Take shorter showers. I've learned that, take a shorter shower and save water. But all of this is methods that I think people understand and accept. Right now, we're not in bad shape. Actually, I'm looking up country right now, and it's raining in the Hailei, Maile, Olinda, Makawao area, and that's one of our big water sources for up country. So when you see rain up there, you feel a lot more comfortable. But we are in the Central Plain area, West and South Maui are very, very dry, and we're hopeful that we will be able to prevent any major brush fires, but more importantly, be prepared by reducing and conserving water.
We talked to Mayor Rick Blangiardi on this program just last week, and one of the topics that came up was a piece of legislation that passed through the legislature this past session regarding bail reform. And the mayor was very outspoken about that, and he said that all the other mayors were also against this bill and would be speaking to the governor. I'm wondering if we can get your thoughts on this bail reform bill and any conversations that you have had with the other mayors on this or with the governor.
Well, the mayors, we've all spoken about this, and most of us are not in favor of this bill reduction, or this bill, no bill at all. But there is a real challenge because there are some offenders who get stuck in our system and sit there for weeks at a time before, and if they can put bail before they have their trial date set. So we've got to look for a happy compromise or a medium compromise. So I'm hoping the governor vetoes the bill and that we can all work on something that's more applicable to what's needed. Because you can't let everyone out. We found that when we did that during the pandemic, we let prisoners out, or detainees out, not prisoners, actually, correction, detainees that were waiting for their court dates or waiting for a court appearance. And some of them went right back to doing what they were doing when they were arrested. And so I think the community doesn't like that idea. I think the community would like some kind of program where if you're going to let people out, that there's some assurance, some monitoring that they're not going to start committing crimes while waiting to go to trial.
Mhm. I also, tied to the drought, going back to that, want to ask you about the axis deer situation, because the two really do go hand in hand. We know that the governor extended the emergency proclamation for the axis deer situation on Maui. Part of the problem, of course, is that you have tens of thousands of these animals that are roaming on private land. What do you think that the county can do right now to address this issue? I think a lot of people on the neighbor islands, or actually not on Maui, I should say, don't really realize just how serious this problem is, and that you have tens of thousands of animals destroying much of the land there on Maui.
Yes, this is causing erosion problems. Some of the bigger floods we've had, really, we find a lot of deer poop at the bottom where the settling happens. So we know that they're very active. They're eating everything they can find. And with the drought, it makes them come closer to what I call the populated areas. Yesterday, I was on Molokai, and coming back from the east end, a deer crossed right in front of our car. We stopped, and that deer was on its last legs. I mean, very honestly, it was, you could see the bone sticking out. I mean, it was really pathetic. And a lot of deer are dying on Molokai, like in other areas, because there's no food, no water, everything's dry. And so what we're trying to do is mitigate the herds. First, protecting the farmers by putting in fencing and other preventative measures, but at the same time, having programs to mitigate, to reduce the herds, because they cannot sustain themselves. What we really need to do is change the hunting methods, because what hunters do, hunters like to go after the bucks because of the antlers. But it's the does that we need to start reducing, because one buck can promulgate 200 doe, and it happens, and then you got another 200 fawns or baby deers, and so the population keeps growing exponentially. And when that happens, you tax everything around you, and that's what's happening here in Maui. And so some of our plans are to mitigate our herds. We need the private landowners to give us permission to go on their lands. Many of them are concurring and helping us out now. And they also have hunters and others that are taking care of what they can on their property. But this problem has been long coming, and something that we should have been looking at years and years ago, but unfortunately we didn't. Now is the time we've got to do what we need to do to mitigate the herds and reduce them to a point where they're sustainable and we're not being taxed. Our farmers and the ranchers are not being taxed.
Another problem that is facing Maui County and really facing all the counties throughout the state is that of affordable housing. We know that there are a number of issues in front of you and the county council there on the island of Maui, and proposals of how to deal with providing affordable housing, but also taking a look at the inventory on the island. Wanted to just get your thoughts on where you folks are at with some of these measures, and what do you believe to be the quickest way to kind of help with some of these affordable housing issues that Maui County faces?
Well, first of all, that's a multi-question, so let me go break it down, if I may. Immediately, what we're trying to do is, with some of the projects that have been approved, get them started, get them building. Right here in Wailuku, we have some apartments and some complexes that have broken ground. The Waikupu Venture partnership with the county hopefully will be breaking ground by September, October. We need to start building and build quickly. Infill building is part of it. Our inventory is very, very low and extremely low, which is causing a real increase in the prices. Supply and demand. Supply is extremely high. Demand is extremely high. Supply is extremely low. And that's what's making this whole situation really what it is now. But once we start building affordable, or what we call attainable housing or attainable units, how do we keep them in that category and not let it be sold 5 or 10 years? We made many projects here in Maui County, Wai'ehu, Skill Village, and others, just to name a few, Kilauea Mauka on West Maui. The county and the plantation contributed a lot of money and effort in building homes for the workers there. Many of them have retired, some have sold, some have moved on, some have passed on. And so what happens now, those homes are being bought up by others at very high prices. In Wai'ehu, I know a family that bought a house for $125,000. Just last year, they sold that same house for $785,000. Then it was just 20 years. Now, I understand prices go up, but this is hurting us. So we've got to look at methods of maybe how we can keep affordable in perpetuity, along with building other homes and other types of housing, because we need a right array of housing for people that may want to move on and build their own and have something for equity in the future, for college, for their kids to return home, something of that nature. So there's, again, it's a multifaceted problem. And here in Central Maui, we've got about 2,100 units ready on the books, ready to be built. Now we need to build them, because that will help start the process of reducing this drastic need of housing here in Maui County.
There is also the issue when it comes to housing of outside investors buying a property or buying something as a second, third, fourth home even. Do you think that at the county level that you could levy higher taxes on people who are buying these not to live in as a primary residence? Is that something that you're looking at? And if so, what is an appropriate, what is a number for you that you think would be appropriate, would actually discourage people from doing this, or at least give the county some more resources?
Well, we're already doing that with different tiers as far as non-owned or non-occupied residents, which we know people sometimes buy a home, live here 2 or 3 months, and leave it vacant the rest of the time. So we're looking at some changes in that area. We already raised the rates much higher than the regular everyday rentals that people do here that live here. So we're working on that. We're looking at other methods of, we put in that if you bought a home here, you could not rent it out for 5 years, short-term rentals. We put restrictions on new purchases to stop people from just buying for speculation purposes, but it's still happening. And so what we're trying to do is work on different methods, build more inventory for our workforce, and at the same time, like you said, raise the taxes on these people who are just investing. Use that additional income to help offset the lack of housing for our workforce and our underprivileged.
I do have to ask you, you are seeking re-election in this election season, in the middle, I'm assuming, of just a campaign season as well. But as you reflect back, as your first term comes to an end here as Maui Mayor, what would you say has been the most challenging part of this job for you over these past few years? And what is maybe the biggest accomplishment you believe that your administration has been able to achieve during this time?
Well, first of all, I think every mayor that has, like myself and Derek, has spent the last 2+ years with this pandemic, with all the different surges, the different changes, the different non-mandates and policies, and watching CDC and World Health Organization and our Department of Health and all the medical people around us advising us what to do and how to do it. We've written the manual on a pandemic, never seen before, a global pandemic. I think that was probably the biggest thing that I could not foresee when I became mayor, which also really caused a lot of trickling effects, such as supply chain issues right now, higher costs for material, which now is taking a hold on residential building. These are things that we need to continue to work on. I think the biggest accomplishment is my ability to lead our community through one of the most horrific, uncertain times and get them to a point where right now I see and they see a brighter future. We've got the boots on the ground and we're going to move ahead and get things done. And with their help being reelected, I can do this and get the next 4 years to get the plan that was really built to make Maui a better place, a reality, not something that's conceptual. And so that's how I would answer that question.
We're almost out of time, but before we go, I want to go back to where we started, this idea of respectful masking, what you're asking residents to do right now, and what happens if they don't.
Well, if the numbers keep climbing and we stress our hospital and our hospital reaches what we call the line in the sand capacity, and they're not able to take more patients, or they're growing, they can't handle what we have going on. At that point in time, I would consider putting something back on, putting restrictions back in place. But till then, that's why I'm asking people to be respectful. Let's all work together like we've done in the past and make sure that we do the right things, mask up, good hygiene. Don't get into big crowds unless you have to. And really be mindful of those around you, even at work. If they're sneezing or coughing, tell them to go home. Tell them that that's not good, because even if it's just a cold, they spread the cold to you. It's important that people understand respectful masking is to protect not only your colleagues or your family, but to protect yourself also.
All right, Maui Mayor Mike Victorino, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning and giving us an update on everything that's happening there in your county. We always enjoy our conversations and appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you, and it's been a whirlwind administrative time for me, and now I'm feeling that we're really on a good path for the future. Yes, we'll have some bumps, inflation, high gas prices, all of that will hit us, but we're resilient. Our island people are really resilient, and Maui County and the rest of the state has shown that. And I believe we're in a good path. All we need to do now is to sit down and really work together. And I see that happening more and more. God bless you all. Take care. To all out there, aloha. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you so
Aloha.
much.
Thank you so much. Great to hear from him. And you did hear the mayor there outlining his sort of threshold, his line in the sand, if you will, for putting in any kind of restrictions. It does sound like it's something that's on the table, but something that he really wants to avoid at all costs. He does not want to impose any gathering size limits or mandatory masking. So right now asking for respectful masking when it comes to indoor spaces, but also saying that he is watching the hospital numbers and is concerned.
Yeah, you can definitely say, as we heard also towards the end, he's learned a lot through this pandemic, and as he said, they've written the manual on how to deal with things as this pandemic has evolved, and this, of course, is yet another evolution of this ongoing pandemic, and that they will continue to watch the numbers. But again, as you mentioned, Yenji, really just encouraging those residents to be respectful with their masking. Also talking about visitors coming to the island being respectful of the area. He says that they are looking forward to a busy summer season there in Maui County, but also noting that they are working with the hotels and speaking to them about how these visitors can be respectful visitors and understanding some of the more sacred areas of the islands and how to interact with the locals, as we know that that was an issue that came up during the pandemic and when we saw the last summer surge.
That's right. Maui is a very popular destination for visitors, also a very popular destination for second homes and real estate speculation. And so the county is looking at other ways to discourage some of that so that people who are local and who live here can actually afford to buy a home. We see the numbers on Maui. I believe the latest that I looked, the median price there was $1.2 million for a single family home. Obviously, very, very out of reach for many in that community. And so the county is looking at other ways to try to reduce that and keep homes affordable. So we touched on a lot with him, also talked about the drought and axis deer. If you missed any part of this conversation, please go back and watch from the beginning. Remember, you can always catch us as a podcast and on Channel 50 KKAI. We'll be right back here on Friday with another edition of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, stay safe.
Aloha. We'll see you then.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.